Okay. Okay, so we'll start. And I'd just like to say good morning. And my name is Colleen Brasso, and I, along with my colleague Tyler Peacock, would like to welcome you to another session in the Dryden Learn series. I would first like to begin by acknowledging with respect that we are meeting virtually in Treaty 3 territory, and that the land on which we are gathered is in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Métis people. To begin, we would like to express the city's ongoing commitment to education and provide our community and stakeholders with relevant educational information with respect to the NWMO's Adaptive Phase Management Project. For today's session, I would like to introduce Mac Potter, Partnership Manager for the NWMO Northwest, who will be speaking today on the NWMO Roadmap to Partnership. At this time, I would like to remind everyone that this session is an extension of our professional workplace, and to respect and conduct ourselves in a professional manner that is expected in such an environment throughout this session. There will be an opportunity following the presentation for questions, and we ask that all questions and comments be through a raised hand or the Q&A forum. We would also like to remind everyone to keep your questions relevant to the topic being addressed this morning. Contact information will be provided should you wish to address a question or have a comment following the session. Please join me in welcoming Mac Potter, and at this time, I will turn the meeting over to you, Mac.
Thank you, Colleen, and thank you for all attending today's presentation. I appreciate it. First off, reflecting Colleen, reflect where we are within Northwestern Ontario, a traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people in Region 1, Métis Nation of Ontario. Today, I'm going to be talking about partnership. So my role with the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is to advance partnership discussions with our municipal partners primarily, but also support our Indigenous dialogue with the communities that are in proximity and to the proposed DGR and APM project. So today I wanted to talk about in terms of what is partnership. Oftentimes, many people see that what just happens into a press release, what comes out, what is that facilitation process? How do we explore that? I also wanted to speak to what do proponents, why do proponents and communities negotiate these kind of agreements? Where are those benefits and why do they do these things? I wanted to speak to the historical context and the regional aspect in terms of agreements, as well as the NWMO approach in our next steps in terms of the APM project itself, our work with the city of Dryden, obviously the township of Ignace as well, and our Indigenous partners within the area. So what is partnership? So in the coming years, many projects from mining to both the forestry sector to the APM project itself will be coming forward. The business of building these projects is complex, and a big part of these projects requires a great responsibility of not just the communities itself, but the proponents to conduct their operations in a sustainable fashion as their employees and their company is in the environment in which they lie. Securing the support of these affected communities to proceed with the planned developments and fostering that meaningful participation is a key aspect of the project, and not just the permitting and the development, but also the operation of the project itself. And realizing these benefits, be it small or large, to your communities in proximity to that project is critical in the long-term operation of the project. So looking at our partnership dialogue, we have to acknowledge obviously the complexity of each project. The APM project in itself is a complex project, but no different than a mining project in proximity. So you look at the Goliath Gold Complex outside of Dryden, or the Spring Pearl project by First Mining Gold up in the far north. Each has their own complexities and different concerns that they have to address in terms of their communities in which they lie. And addressing those communities has to reflect your core values of not just on the proponent side, but the community in which you operate. So there's many different agreement types associated with partnership. They can come in the form of exploration agreements, memorandums of understanding, impact benefits agreements, sustainability or friendship agreements. And these are enforceable informal agreements that help drive dialogue in a formal manner, but also one in a context you want to establish early in your development process to ensure that that dialogue can build trust, respect, and build those core values into those long-term discussions. So as I said, in terms of these agreements are set out to seek to address if there's an adverse effect as it relates to the development itself, but also to drive that dialogue to ensure that your local communities, be it municipal or Indigenous, can take advantage of those opportunities related to a project, whether it be socioeconomic, employment, reflection of your cultural or social values, and protection of the environment and participation within the regulatory process. So historically, and this is something that has evolved significantly over the last 2 decades, if you look at NR Canada and Natural Resource Canada, since 1974, a total of 335 impact benefits have been signed with 198 mining projects. I reference mining projects. The APM project is pretty unique as it relates to NWMO. It's a single project, but within our backyard, there's many mining projects, and that's where I wanted to focus. Particularly, it's our backyard up here. So this has been with municipal, Indigenous agreements, also in the case of green energy projects and oil and gas. So these agreements, as I said, cover various stages from resource development to the development process to the operations and the closure cycle. The key aspect I wanted to highlight in terms of agreements is that these have grown fourfold between 2001 and 2010 to 23 to 102. And what I see this in terms of the shift is a recognition of the inherent rights of our Indigenous communities as we're operating within their traditional territories, but also an acknowledgement from a corporate level and a board level for each organization that reflecting these social values and the importance of being good operators within the where we operate is critical. And you see that in terms of that shift from 23 to 102. That's a fourfold difference in 10 years. All these agreements require significant work. And that's a big part of operating sustainably and successfully, not just locally, but in the boardroom as well. So on a proponent side, and NWMO is no different. This relates to a private entity, say a gold mining company, a lithium mine. I know that we've seen all have, from a proponent side, many of these things are similar. So why does a proponent want these agreements? Because they have the most at stake, and they're relying on the Crown creates some uncertainty and risk. There are unique circumstances in the case of the highway twinning, I guess west of Kenora. Crown speaks urgency to advance that project, and they approach their Indigenous partners to drive that project forward. In practice, the Crown frequently expects proponents to consult and reach a mutually agreeable accommodation with its communities in proximity to its project. And from a proponent side, NWMO no different. We want the proponent can control the process and its ability to directly affect the outcome moving ahead. Dialogue is guided mutually from both sides. It allows the ability to analyze technical information, ensure that community-based information is incorporated, and the dialogue is creates meaningful participation and guides discussions forward in a mutually agreeable pathway. There's no universally adopted method as it relates to an agreement structure or approach, but it is in the best interest of all proponents to ensure trust, transparency, and capacity is there to support that meaningful dialogue at an early stage. And that's critical in the sense of advancing the project forward. So in the picture there, you see Minister Rickford signing. That's with the highway twinning project. And the picture on the top right-hand corner is the Cote Gold project, which is a massive project put forward just south or it's near Timmins, Gogama region, but that is a very new gold mine project. Is currently in construction, which soon to be finalized. One of the bigger projects that have been permitted in the last 5 years. So tying to this in terms of obviously fostering that meaningful participation in that dialogue, a key aspect in partnership agreements, particularly in those larger scale ones, is securing a measure of support. Securing that measure of support allows your proponent to obtain your necessary government approvals, be it regulatory or permit approvals from the federal or the province. Having that meaningful participation helps guide that dialogue while also ensuring your community is approaching and understands the project itself. In terms of obtaining financing for a project, environmental and social governance considerations are now a key aspect for private industries in terms of securing financing. It's a metric. It's not just the numbers and what's coming out of the ground that's important. Environmental and social governance considerations have been raised significantly. You look at it across the board, it doesn't matter what sector, this is a key component in terms of obtaining financing at this point too. Also in terms of driving that process forward, working with your regional communities and planning, construction, and operations and closure helps you reduce, helps that participation, helps that the ability of those communities to take advantage of those opportunities within each of those unique cycles, and reduce your uncertainty regarding opposition to the project. If you're ingrained within your community, ensuring that meaningful dialogue, be it municipal or Indigenous, it allows you to have a clear understanding of your opposition to your project, which never goes away, which is all part of the development cycle. You want that dialogue to ensure you can reflect that, but you need to have it allows you to create some aspect of reducing that. And as I said, the most important aspect in terms of securing agreement at an early stage allows for the basis of the relationship to be formed. We want to ensure that that trust is there, the ability to have that dialogue. It's not, you're not doing this in terms of a fight. It's a mutual agreement. It's friendly. We want, yes, do we have to talk about tough stuff? Yes, and that's a key part. But having a formal avenue for that dialogue is important to ensure that that can be reflected and in turn built into the operation on a long-term sustainable fashion. So from a community side, so that's the proponent side, here's the community side. So from a community side, one of the big aspects in terms of securing agreement at an early, middle or late stage is ensuring that they have capacity to participate within the development and approvals process. I will say the Crown does provide funding to help communities participate within the process. However, that can be limited. And this is the avenue for a community, particularly on an Indigenous community front, to ensure that they can meaningfully participate within the process. Sort of going to the next point, looking at the technical review and the discussions as it relates to a project, that's where that capacity really becomes important. As I said, these projects can be very complex. The APN project is a good one as it relates to, say, radiation or water. Having the appropriate capacity and the correct people to help inform that dialogue within a community standpoint, and the staff or say the municipal staff or the Indigenous staff of a community in question is really critical to ensure that people understand the project in an appropriate fashion. Said formalizing that relationship, creating that window. So for you look at the city of Dryden, for instance, in terms of partnership discussions, we formed the significant neighboring community partnership working group. It creates a formal avenue. It's something that's been ratified under council, and it creates that monthly avenue for NWMO and the city to explore these aspects. And as I said, one of the key aspects of driving that participant is the driver, those socioeconomic drivers at each stage. So in the photos here, the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see Wabauskang First Nation when they signed their impact benefit agreement with Goldcorp, which is now Newmont, which was now Evolution, but something that has been carried through. And on the bottom left-hand corner is Greenstone Gold Mines, and that's a key aspect reflecting those social and cultural values of your communities in which you operate. That's a sharing circle, which occurs on an annual basis. And top right hand is PATCON, which is a far north project signing a memorandum of understanding with Waboon Tribal Council. So continuing on is why communities would advance this process. Another big aspect, and particularly on the socioeconomic side, is understanding what opportunities are there for the community itself. So if you look at, you can identify a procurement strategy with your proponent. You want to maximize those local and Indigenous business opportunities. And it allows for capacity development in terms of those businesses. So a very good example of this is the Musselwhite mine in Red Lake. So the mine in 2014 is sort of where the numbers came from, but they purchased nearly $16 million of goods and services from companies owned by Indigenous-led businesses. Their charter surface, I'm sure we're all familiar with Wasaya Airlines, was formed actually through the Musselwhite development process. And Wendigo Community Development Corporation Wendigo Catering is actually a nationally and accredited catering service that was formed through the operation itself. These businesses were created for mine development to primarily support the project. But as we see in terms of both Wasaya and the Wendigo Community Development Corporation, those opportunities have expanded, and now they're taking advantage of that capacity, that initial capacity, to drive those enterprises forward to provide services not just for Musselwhite, but the region as a whole, which is what you want to see in terms of those opportunities and those joint ventures, ensuring that communities can collaborate and have those additional opportunities within the region to participate. Now, regionally, and this is one I think I spoke to, everyone just sees the press releases and that they come out, is these discussions are not just APM and NWMO focused, these occur regionally. And obviously we have in proximity to Dryden, we have Eagle Lake, we have Eagle Lake First Nation, we have Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation, we have Lac Seul, Wabascang, Métis Nation of Ontario. So we have a number of our communities right around in proximity to both the APM project, but also the city of Dryden. And as you can see, in terms of centering on Dryden here, these dots here relate to Treasury Metals and securing their agreements related to the Goliath Gold Complex, relating to Eagle Lake, Métis Nation of Ontario in particular, and Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation as relates to their gold one asset to the north. You can see the highlights as relates to the Red Lake area, and those agreements are primarily signed with Lac Seul First Nation and Wabascang First Nation, as it's their traditional territory. But there's IBAs held under Evolution at the Red Lake Complex. Pure Gold with Madsen has an agreement. If you go down to the Geraldton area, Greenstone holds a trilateral agreement with its Indigenous communities in proximity, as well as working collaboratively with the municipality of Greenstone as relates to development. If you're familiar with that project, some significant highway development, but also the proposed open pit stretches into the municipal bounds. So they've had to work with the municipality as it relates to the project itself. If you look in the Fort Francis area, where both me and Colleen are right now, New Gold, I'm sure everyone's familiar with the Rainy River project, and New Gold, they hold agreements with a number of communities from Nakimagwaning or Whitefish Bay, all the way down to the Couchiching area and in between. So I think there's 12 nations in proximity, and they have an agreements with a number of those parties within there, as well as Métis Nation of Ontario. And if you look at some of our lithium assets, you have Avalon Resources to the north, but it speaks to the work that's being done. So this is not just on an operation or a development. You have key projects that will be subject to agreement discussions in long term. So Kinross or Dixie Gold, which is located proximal to Red Lake. That's a key aspect. They hold an agreement right now with Wabascang and Lac Seul, but that will have to be advanced once Kinross decides to advance that project forward. You have Battle North and the Phoenix Gold project, which was acquired by Evolution. Again, those agreements get passed to the next company to ensure that they could be reflected. And then you have far north aspects. There's Sandy Lake. We have Frontier Lithium proximal to Deer Lake. So it's happening all around us. And these agreements are critical as we can see in terms of the stage. We have impact benefits agreements, which are those final stage agreements, socioeconomic, which is taking advantage of those different cycles of the projects. Exploration and participation speaks to that early stage, and that's building that trust and that relationship aspect. And those MOUs are really that more formal structure. So as I said, in terms of Northwestern Ontario has been home to several major projects for the last 10 years. And these agreements have been struck of various natures and with tribal councils to support the development of those assets. Proponents have also worked collaboratively with municipalities. If you look at regionally, right around Dryden or Red Lake itself, Goldcorp previously worked with the township of Red Lake or municipality of Red Lake as it relates to housing components. Marathon and the Hemlo complex worked as relates to addressing housing components within that community as well. Very recently, Treasury Metals worked with the city of Dryden as it relates to the Thunder Lake dock. The near-term investment aspect that NWMO has put forward with the Township of Ignace. You can see that in full as it relates to the plaza when you're driving through town. And local services board. I know NWMO has been advancing that forward with our local services board. You look at Melgan and the local service board in Wabigoon, advancing that forward to ensure that they have some infrastructure in terms of a gazebo project. And a big one, which I don't want to, it's not the last one, is the Sioux Lookout Friendship Accord and the agreements that they struck not only with proponents, but also educational institutes. There's been significant amount of training that's been done over the last year as part of that Friendship Accord, which is provincially renowned, and they've done a very good job in supporting that development going ahead. In the picture here, I highlighted Armo Wind. As everyone knows, NWMO has two sites, South Bruce and the Ignace Wabigoon area. Armo's agreement with the municipality, municipality of Kincardine, allocates a certain proportion of dollars each year, and they divide that based on mutual collaboration to supporting causes such as the Community Healthcare Foundation. So on a partnership pathway for NWMO, communities in the region, I know from my perspective on a municipal end, we have the Township of Ignace and we have the City of Dryden. And we're beginning those detailed discussions on how to advance learning and build those sustainable partnerships. So those need to be aligned as it relates to the development of the project itself. We have to ensure that that investment is driving the capability of not just Ignace or Dryden, but the region as a whole. We have to identify where and what kind of investments and pathway we want to take. They have to align with the vision and the official planning for the community itself. And they have to be founded on the values of, I know from a NWMO perspective and a proponent, we want to ensure that our core values are reflected moving ahead, but also acknowledge that needs are different across the area. So if we're talking to, say, Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation or Eagle Lake First Nation, the values from both a council perspective, but also a community standpoint may be different, and we have to reflect that. Same with the City of Dryden and the Township of Ignace. They have potentially different views and different needs based on the approach moving forward. So you look at the City of Dryden in terms of infrastructure, obviously on a service perspective, not reflecting obviously the current conditions as it relates to the flood, but looks at infrastructure, ensuring that we have appropriate housing for our individuals. More people are transitioning Dryden from the far north. We have to ensure that. I know highlight Tyler's work in getting the new apartment complexes built. Those are key projects that aid the city, not just short-term, but long-term. And that speaks to our partnership pathways. We have to figure out the appropriate pathway moving ahead. In doing that, from an NWMO perspective, we've entered into Learn More agreements. So these are not just these agreements are not just Indigenous focused, they're also municipal focused. They're called a little different from a municipal end, but they also serve the same purpose in the sense of we want to ensure that we are supporting community well-being, and we want to ensure communities are engaged in a positive position. So they're not undertaking or incurring debt to participate actively within the project in the APM cycle. So these Learn More agreements can be secured by both municipal and Indigenous communities participating as hosts. Our municipal and Indigenous communities that are neighbors to the project, such as Dryden, national, regional, provincial, and territorial organizations from an Indigenous end, and local service boards. So for regionally, look at Melgan and Wabigoon. So these Learn More agreements allow for NWMO in terms of it's a process moving forward to ensure that we can cover administrative planning expenses, resources to participate within the process, and resources to encourage youth involvement, capacity building, education, skills development, and resources to support future community decision making. This forum itself is one of those avenues that we want to ensure that the dialogue's there. And I know from an NWMO perspective, getting into the community on top of the work that Colleen, Tyler, and the administration on Dryden do to ensure that that meaningful participation can be there in the initial stage, acknowledging that our project is still subject to the approval cycle, which will be another avenue in terms of that participation, both from an NWMO perspective, but a federal regulator perspective, that individuals and constituents within the City of Dryden can participate. So if you look at benefits in action right now, and top right-hand corner, you see the plaza, you can see that as you drive by, you'll see the Tesla superchargers there. That recent paving was secured through the near-term investment dollars as part of our work with the Township of Ignace. I did want to highlight some of the donations in terms of working with food banks. There's 50,000 to the Northwest Health Unit as well. The Bruce County Library Project, I got to highlight some of our the other site as well. But the one in the bottom right-hand corner is the one I really wanted to focus on, is that speaks to first responder training and integration. And that speaks to values and some of the concerns locally that our job moving partnership forward is important. We have to understand that transport and that mechanism within the APM cycle is a primary concern. Emergency management is another concern that's been carried forward significantly within the community. And providing these avenues on a short-term but a long-term basis within our partnership dialogue, but also corporately working collaboratively with our municipalities is important to ensure that that information is provided. So what does partnership look like moving forward in terms of NWMO, in terms of our outlook? We want to ensure our project is implemented in a manner that enhances community well-being and reflects the youth engagement moving forward as a priority. Obviously, as a short-term but a long-term project, it's an intergenerational project, and we want to ensure that the site, as in the implications of it advancing forward, reflects our values, principles, but also the long-term community well-being, supports our services, creates a track record of sustainability, economic supports, health, education, and training. It's a wide spectrum, but one that as a group between the administration, myself, the organization, we have to ensure that we guide that process to ensure we have flexibility, but we also can ensure that we can reflect that to the people living in our communities, that we're doing our job as corporate citizens and administration to take advantage of the project at each phase. So how does it look like through 2022 to 2026? We're going to continue building that staffing presence, continue to evolve our safety culture, ingraining that in not just our staff, but our local contractors. We continue to engage our municipalities, City of Dryden, Township of Ignace, our Indigenous communities, Wabigoon Lake, Eagle, and Métis communities, building awareness, developing and sustaining those relationships. And as I said, developing those mutual agreement benefit agreements. Those are critical in terms of the long-term operation and the site selection process itself. And we want to ensure that our communities have enough resources to participate, not just now, but particularly through the regulatory process. And that's all I got. I'll stop sharing my screen and I will turn it over to Colleen to do questions.
Hey there, Colleen.
There's no questions. I must have done a good job.
It was a great presentation. Thanks, Mac. I'm not sure what's going on with Colleen's mic. Still can't hear you, Colleen.
My apologies. I forgot to unmute myself. Thank you for the great presentation, Mac. We really appreciate it. And at this time, there's no questions from our participants. Tyler, are you seeing anything on your end?
I don't have anything in the Q&A or in the chat. So yeah, like I say, Mac, thank you very much for taking the time out of the day, and it was a very informative presentation for sure.
No, what I do want to stress in terms of this is the partnership and this aspect is I know I always say it too when people ask me what I do is this is the gray. This is the area that people don't see in the public sphere, whether with a mining company, whether the forestry or whatnot. These kind of discussions are something that's happening within our region. They're critical in terms of driving that projects forward in an appropriate fashion, but they're one that there is some uncertainty, whether it be on a municipal sense or an Indigenous sense. It creates that uncertainty. But those conversations are ongoing. And as I said, they reflect our values. They want to ensure that trust, transparency, coming forward at the appropriate fashion. And I know from the city's perspective, you got some great individuals that are helping guiding that process moving forward. And I encourage to reach out to Colleen, Tyler, or any of the administration if anyone has any questions, particularly for the Nuclear Engagement Committee as it relates to these kind of things. I'm a pretty easy guy to get up there and sit down and have a cup of coffee because it's a lot of this stuff it doesn't get talked about very often. And as I said, most people see the press release, but there's a lot of work that goes into the first phase. And I know with some of the work that's coming out as it relates to both the regional and the Dryden community capacity studies, there's going to be some great information that will be reflected long-term within these kind of agreements. So with that, I'll turn it over to Colleen and Tyler, and I appreciate the time today, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mark. Like I said, it was a very good and thorough presentation. Just a couple of comments. I put my contact email in the chat. And we encourage you to refer to the city's new, we've got a new website page for the Dryden Nuclear Education and Engagement Committee. And I would encourage you to go there and subscribe to the page. Anytime there's new content added, you will be notified. But it's got a lot of resources and information on the upcoming sessions and recordings of previous sessions, as well as resources and links to various associations and groups, as well as contact information. And it'll have postings of information with regard to our new committee and their agendas and meeting minutes and recordings of those sessions as well. So we encourage folks to subscribe to that page and go have a look at it. And thank you again, Mac. We really appreciate it. And I guess having no further questions from any of our participants, I guess we'll end our session today.
Perfect. Go enjoy the warmer weather, and for everyone that's dealing with the flooding, I'm all the best, and hope that, particularly on an infrastructure sense, there's a good pathway forward and people are doing things as safe and secure.
Thank you, Mac, very much. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.